Welcome to this live. I have to be really honest with you today that diving in on the topic today, how to navigate leadership in time of grief, isn't necessarily what gets me very excited. And the reason for that is that over the past 5 months, I have been going and still am going through grieving the loss of my son who passed away on the 24th of March. And at the same time, the experience that I've had from going through it, being very public about it, being a leader myself, and helping female leaders in their work, I realized that this is a topic that we need to address. We need to address grief if we want to have organizations that is suited and fit for the future. It's about showing up as leaders when we are going through grief ourselves. And remember, grief can be grieving over a loss of a loved one to death, but it can also be grieving a divorce, a separation. It can be something that has great impact on us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rita Hausken. I'm the founder of Shestainability, where we help female leaders to create bigger impact and influence in male-dominated industries and do so without conforming. And the topic that I'm bringing up today is exactly about this. It's how do we do this in a authentic manner and step away from the trap of conforming to the normal standard setup when it comes to dealing with what I would call the elephant in the room. It can be super difficult to deal with a person who is experiencing grief. It can be difficult to know, as a leader, I am going through this extreme situation. How am I going to show up and lead in the midst of a time when I'm so overwhelmed with grief? So I wanted to share that with all of you today, and I would love to hear where you're calling in from, or not calling in from, but where you are watching in from. So put your name in the chat. I also love to connect with you. So when you put your name in the chat, I want to connect on LinkedIn. Maybe there are some certain things we can talk about. You might have something you would love for me to bring up. Maybe you have questions that you would love to have answered in the weekly lives that I'm doing. Please go ahead and just let us know. I also love for this to be a kind of co-creative session, even though today I might be operating pretty much as a monologue on this one. Now, what I want to share with you is that when it comes to grief, grief in itself can contribute with some transformational changes within the organization. I know this sounds really strange, but I'm going to say it anyway. Because again, like I said, it's the elephant in the room. Nobody's really talking about it, so very few organizations know what they're missing. You know, I'm sure you heard this. When we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, diversity is the area where we feel that we're quite familiar. We have gender diversity, ethnicity, we have neurodiversity, we have handicap. There's a lot of things. But there's one part of diversity that I feel isn't utilized enough, and this is where grieving and loss and lived experiences come into play. And it's exactly that last piece that I said, lived experiences, and whilst it is also happening. When we want to have an inclusive organization, do you know how much power there is when it comes to a person that have experienced something and in a safe environment can bring her or his experience to the table. With so many organizations that I'm talking with, and we're talking about burnout, and organizations tell me that yes, we are really kind of giving all the support to a person with burnout, and you name it, it's this, is that. And I said, but what about the fact that a person who has gone through burnout is a major contributor to transformational culture change in the organization? What about bringing the experience into the room and see what can we do? How can we use this experience to create a more inclusive work environment? The same is for lived experiences when it comes to loss. And remember, to grieving is the emotional feeling we have, right? It happening from the inside. The word mourning is basically what the outside is experiencing from somebody who's going through grief. So when we think about that, we have gone through 2 years plus with COVID. We've gone through people who have had real tragedies happening in their lives because of loss, in the loss of their loved ones, but also the loss of freedom to go into the office, to grieve the sadness of not being able to move around in the free capacity that we have been used to. And now, as we're transitioning into the, I don't know what you call it, new world. What do you call it? What do you call post-COVID? There's so many things going on. But what we do know is that if we are not addressing grief, we are missing a big opportunity to make a big difference in the organizational culture. But what I'm going to talk to you today is more, if you are a leader and you are experiencing being in face of a grief. Again, that can be so many things. It can be loss of a loved one. It can be loss of a relationship. It can be a divorce, a separation. There are many, many areas here. But there are three areas that I really want to step in on today that is a part of how to navigate leadership during a time of grief. And the first one is actually authenticity. How do we lead with authenticity when we are overwhelmed with grief? Again, I want to share a bit about my own story. What I decided to do when my son passed away this year was to be public about it. As a leader myself, as a woman with an organization that is helping other female leaders to create more impact and influence, I felt called to be transparent with what I was going through. I was really nervous about that. I didn't know what the reaction would be out there. I didn't know what the critiques would say. I didn't know if it would impact the business. I didn't know if it would mean that the surrounding would say, she's lost the plot. It's like, that is not the thing you do in public. You don't grieve, you don't mourn in public. But I wanted to use my experience to share it whilst I was in it as a reference point to see how much can be revealed in grief. What I want to share with you, as I was doing that, I had a lot of comments, in particular from other women who was very supportive, who was like, you're teaching us so much about what it means to show up in the vulnerable space, lead with authenticity. But I could never do that in my workplace. That is a comment that I've received from so many women. I can't do that in my workplace. And one of the explanation one of my clients had was that in her work environment, it is about keeping it together. It's about the perception of you go to work to escape maybe from some of that. You can almost like, isn't it good to come back to work and you can kind of leave that behind and you can kind of move on. And another one, she shared that she has experienced showing emotions and then been kind of, mansplained of how she should behave and how this is not good for her and all these things from her male leader. And basically what she said is that what that did to me was just throw it away, put on the mask, show up, business as usual. And then it took a longer time to get back to feeling connected to the work. So when I am talking about showing up, being vulnerable, being an authentic leader, it does come with a disclaimer that when we do that, we are doing like Brené Brown is saying, when you're vulnerable, you are willing to expose yourself, but you never know what's going to hit you back. But it's doing it anyway. It's doing it anyway. So this is why I want to just speak to all leaders, and the majority of leaders, in particularly in male-dominated industries, are men. So this is also a strong message, kind of to encourage you as men to also know that if you are looking to get more women on board in your organization as you're focusing on meeting your ESG targets, meeting your DEI, wanting to have a more inclusive and place of belonging type of organization, how you show up in time of adversity, how you show up when you have experienced tragedy, loss, feeling of grief, actually means a lot in the way you are attracting female talents and the kind of the feminine thinking, which we need more of. So I am not saying that this is easy. I am saying from my experience that this is the way forward. When we want to create organizations driven by empathy, if we cannot use the opportunity to share from ourselves how we truly feel in a situation of adversity or loss, and we are in the midst of grieving, we are not only losing a big opportunity to heal ourselves, but we're actually losing out on a big opportunity to create a safe organization. So this is what I wanted to share with you. And I'm curious, what is your experience? Have you experienced this kind of authenticity amongst your leaders? What is your take on it? What do you think a leader can do when it comes to showing grief in a situation that is tragic? So I'm curious about that. Now, the other thing is how to navigate leadership during a time of grief is an opportunity to create a culture of humanness. Because we so often forget in organizations that we're humans. We are so focused on the business. We emphasize on building our brand, serving our audience, adjusting products offerings, staying really focused on the hardcore of the business and thinking that that is the entire engine. And that is the thing that leads to increased revenue. as a result of doing that, we kind of lose sight on the most important engine that drives any organizations forward, which are people, right? It's you, it's me. We are the one who are connected, who have emotions. We are the engine, right? So when we are experiencing being leaders and we're going through something, it is an opportunity for us to bring up the elephant in the room, so to speak, because the majority of us don't even know how to deal with a person who's grieving. And as a leader, we can, in one way, invite people in to show up and support and help us. And through that, we're creating even deeper human connection. And we are leaning into a human culture. This is also where I want to say is in diversity, this lived experience, and as we are in the middle of living it, as we are when we're in grief, that shapes the culture inside. Because that isn't, it's not the talent, it's not about something you learn in school, it's about something that we're willing to bring to the awareness of everyone and start creating dialogue around that. So when we are talking about empathy, as leaders, we can, through our vulnerability and sharing grief in the way that we feel comfortable with, you are the only one that can find your way. But what I can say is that you can share far more than you can imagine. People want you to be transparent. If you are scared that somebody is going to misuse your vulnerability, there are far more people that is misusing the fact that you're not showing up in grief and showing emotions than those who would do the opposite. You being you is also an opportunity for you to maneuver through grief faster because you have a support system and you're part of shaping a culture. So this is so important. Now, the third point, and I think this is one of the most important ones, it is to leverage grief to strengthen your team. And what do I mean by that? Well, how you do anything is how you do everything. That means that if you as a leader is able to share and be open about what's going on for you in a situation where you feel this is something I want to share and I want to kind of invite people in, what is happening in that situation is that you're opening the gate for the teams or people within the organization to show up and say, how can I support you? Which has nothing to do with their job. It has nothing to do with anything but showing human compassion. You are then inviting people to show up, inviting them in to share, to bond. You are giving them an opportunity to help. That is why we want to use the opportunity to ask for support, to ask for help. Now, the second thing I want to share is that when you're able to do that, you're also kind of opening the possibility for talking about the elephant in the room, where when you have shown that you can do that, other people who are going through the same or similar feel also that I can talk about that. Now, this is the power of this. That is true team building, because when we are using these opportunities, which I call this is the elephant in the room because we don't want to talk about it, but when we are doing it and we're bringing it in and we're starting to talk about it, we're creating a dialogue room, that is team building. Because I can guarantee you that on the path of all your team members, they will meet people on the project, within your own organization, or elsewhere that have experienced loss, going through divorces, going through death, going through job losses, whatever that is. That means that you're creating a team that shows up with empathy towards the wider group of society. Now, this is the S in ESG, right? This is the humanist. This is to be really social. This is to bring it all together. So when we are using our grief to say, you know what, I'm willing to do my experience as a leader, I'm grieving. I would like to open up, to receive help and support. Thank you. I so appreciate it. Now, this is team building. And this is what I say. It's like, it's crisis management as well. How you do anything is how you do everything. If you cannot deal with a small crisis in the office, how do you think that you're going to deal with a big crisis? No, it doesn't work like that. The same goes for emotional crisis, time of grieving. When there is an opportunity to show compassion, that is your calling. How you do anything is how you do everything. If we can create a safe space around topics that is so difficult, the organization is moving fast forward. So what's your take on that? What do you think? What do you think? Is it smart of a leader to step into sharing? Would you like to have a leader that can share and stand in that emotion? I'm curious. In one way, it feels sometimes that there's no right and wrong. What I can say though is that in the time of my own grieving that continues to go through, by me being open about it, I've been able to discover new opportunities or ways in which I can support the clients that I serve to serve organizations through DEI, and particularly on how do you create safe environments. It has given me the opportunity to go through my emotions and pause and isolate, maybe completely, like for a full day, like I did this week, and then be energized going back into work again because I have been sharing and I have been allowing myself to breathe. If a leader can't show that grieving and taking space and creating space, taking time off and allowing time, people under will not think they can do it either. So I wanted to share that with all of you today. I love your comment, whether that is because you've been here live or if you are watching this replay. Curious to hear your thoughts on this, right? And I'd love to connect with you and look forward to seeing you on my next live. Okay, bye for now.